Right, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is a new section in Wajibatus Salah. So, Faslun fi Wajibatis Salati, a section on the Wajibat of Namaz, Wajibat of Salah. The first question is the Wajibat, right, is a Wahid or is a Tasniya or is it Jama? And if it's Jama, then is it Mukassar or is it Salim? Right? And if it's a Salim, then is it Mudhakkar or is it Muannas? Right, so one of the things that you need to find out for yourselves, applying the knowledge that you already have so far, and you should be able to do this, whether Wajibat is Wahid, Tasniya or Jama. If it's Jama, then is it Jama Mukassar, or is it Jama Muzakkar Salim, or is it Jama Muannas Salim? So this is one of your first task, is to find out which type of Jama is this. Okay, the author says وَهُوَ ثَمَانِيَةَ عَشَرَ شَيْئًا. Right? He says that there are ثَمَانِيَةَ عَشَرَ, meaning 18. There are 18 things which are wajibat, or which are regarded as wajibat in or wajibat for namaz. Okay, in here we have ثَمَانِيَةَ عَشَرَ. Right? You should be able to figure out which type of murakkab is this. So that's your task number 2. Is this murakkab mufid or ghair mufid? If it's mufid, then obviously khabariya or insha'iyya. And if it's ghair mufid, then you know, for example, tawsifi, izafi, binai, and manasarf. So that's your second task. Thamaniyat ashara, which type of murakkab? Again, you have enough information to figure it out. Okay. So the author says there are 18. Right? There are 18 wajibat of namaz. The first one, he says, Qira'atul Fatiha. Qira'atul Fatiha. The recitation of Surah Fatiha. Right? Here, notice that this is murakkab izafi. Yeah, this is murakkab izafi. This one is nakira, and this one is, the second word is marifa. So when you have this kind of combination, nakira and marifa, then it will be going towards murakkab izafi. So you should be able to read this correctly. Qira'atul Fatihati. Next one is wadammu suratin. So the first wajib is the recitation of Suratul Fatiha. Now the difference here between recitation of Surah Fatiha and recitation on its own. Recitation on its own is farz. Specific recitation of Suratul Fatiha. So to recite Suratul Fatiha specifically, that is wajib. Okay. Now next is wadammu suratin aw thalathi ayatin fi rakatain. And to attach a surat, yeah, short or a long, is up to you. Any surat of the Quran beside Suratul Fatiha. Yeah, beside Suratul Fatiha. That's why it says wadammu suratin, to attach a surat. To attach a surat with recitation of Suratul Fatiha. If you don't want to read the full surah, then you can read 3 ayats or thalathi ayatin. There's one thing they haven't mentioned here, is that, so you have 3 options here. Well, actually, let's call it 4 options. Number 1, Fatiha. Okay, that's a must. Then number 2, either a surah, right, besides Suratul Fatiha, or 3 ayats, or 1 ayat equal to 3 ayats. Like for example, Ayatul Kursi is a big Ayatul Kursi, for example, is a big ayah, so that's permissible. So recitation of Suratul Fatiha specifically, that is wajib, and to attach with that recitation of Suratul Fatiha either surah or 3 ayats or 1 ayat that is equal to 3 ayats, that is also wajib. When fi rak'ataini, in 2 rakats, غير متعينتين من الفرض, in either of the two rakats of farz. So meaning, let's say you're praying 4 rakats, then you can pray in the first 2 or in the last 2. Okay, غير متعينتين. Now a question here for you guys is, this متعينتين, can you figure out its original form, right? Or can you classify that? So for example, the first thing is it ism, fi'l or harf? Okay. Second thing is, if it's ism, then is it wahid, tasniya or jama? Is it muzakkar or muannas? And can you then figure out which type of ism is it? Is it ism fa'il, ism maf'ul, ism zarf, ism ala? If it's a fail, then which type of fail? Mazi, mudari, amar or nahi, like that. So can you find out about muta'ayyanatain? So the author says, in the 2 rakats of farz, which 2 rakats, it doesn't matter. He says that you need to do Qiraatul Fatiha and attach a surat or 3 ayats or 1 ayat equal to 3 in farz namaz. However, in all of the rakats of witr and nafal, so in all of the witr namaz, in all of nafal namaz, in all of sunnah muakkada namaz, in all of sunnah ghair muakkada namaz, in all of the rakats, it's wajib upon you that you pray Suratul Fatiha and you attach a surat with it. So they haven't mentioned sunnah muakkada or sunnah ghair muakkada here. Why? Because they have included that in nafal. So nafal here, it includes sunnah muakkada and sunnah ghair muakkada. Okay. So how many have we done so far? We've done Qiraatul Fatiha as 1, Zammu Suratin aw Thalathi Ayatin fi Rakatain, that's 2, and then fi Jami'i Rakatil Witr, that's 3. Yeah, that's my understanding anyway. It might change, I don't know. Okay, now the next one. Ta'yinul Qira'a fil Ulayain. To fix the first 2 rakats of farz, that is wajib. To fix first 2 rakats of it is wajib. And then وَتَقْدِيمُ الْفَاتِحَةِ عَلَى سُورَةٍ, and to pray Suratul Fatiha first and then you add a surah to it, that is wajib. So If a person, he prays Inna A'tayna first, then he prays Surah Al-Fatiha, his namaz will be valid. But he has missed the wajib. Wajib was that he was supposed to pray Surah Al-Fatiha first, and then he was supposed to attach a surah or 3 ayats or 1 ayat equal to 3. Moving on. Then the author says, وَذَمُّ الْأَنْفِ لِلْجَبْهَ فِي السُّجُودِ. And it's wajib that the person, he places his nose and the forehead in sujood. Okay, so he's going to put his nose, the tip of his nose, as well as his forehead in sajda. That is also wajib. Then he says, وَالْإِتْيَانُ بِالسَّجْدَةِ الثَّانِيَةِ فِي كُلِّ رَكَعَةٍ. Then it's wajib that he brings the second sajda in every rakat. So this tells you that for a rakat, it's a wajib upon you that you perform 2 rakats in that one, you perform 2 sujood in that one rakat. Okay, when will you perform the second sajda of that rakat? قبل الانتقال لغيرها, before you move on to another rakat, or before you move on to another thing. If it's the last rakat, then before you move on to qada akhira, right? If it's a long, meaning if it's 4 rakats or 3 rakats, then you move on to qada ula without performing the second sajda of that rakat. You would have missed your wajib. So the author says that you need to bring a second sajda for that rakat in the rakat. And that is wajib. Okay. وَالْإِتْمِنَانُ فِي الْأَرْكَانِ. So itminan in every position, meaning every rukn of namaz, that is wajib. Now you know what the arkan is, what are the arkans. You have done your list previously. Okay, so itminan in this, in your farz positions, that is wajib. Now what do we mean by itminan? Itminan, it means to be motionless, to be to pose yourself without any movement whatsoever in that particular position. That is itminan. So you're going into ruku, you need to pause in ruku, right? It's not just go in the ruku and come back up. No, go into ruku, pause in ruku, even if that is for 1 second. Right, as I was saying, that itminan fil arkan, that you need to stay motionless in every rukn of namaz, that is wajib. Then qudul awwal. First sitting. What does it mean by first sitting? First sitting is to sit after 2 rakats. Okay, that is first sitting. So to sit after 2 rakats, that will be qada ula. Or what you could potentially say is that here, I know they say qudul awwal, but what they mean is all sitting positions which is not the last one. So all sitting positions except the last one. The last one will be called Qudul Akhir, the last qada. Beside the last qada, all other sitting would be regarded as Qudul Awwal or Qudul Thani, etc. So what do I mean by that? Let's say a person started to read namaz, he prayed one rakat, he prayed the second rakat, then he sat. Okay, then he prayed his third rakat, then he sat, and then he completed his namaz. Then he completed his namaz. So in this particular case, this will be qada awwal, right? And this will be qada akhira. Okay. If he's praying 4 rakat namaz, for example, 2 rakats he prayed, then he sat, then third rakat, then fourth rakat, then he prayed, then he sat in qada, and then he completed it. This one would be qada ula, and this one will be qada akhira. Okay, now this is needed when we talk about making up the rakats. So for example, let's say a person, he joined the imam in the second rakat of Maghrib. So this is imam. Okay, he prayed first rakat, he prayed his second rakat, then he sat, then he prayed his third rakat, then he sat in qada akhira, and then he completed his namaz. Okay, now imagine the muqtadi. Okay, he joined the imam here in the second rakat of the imam. Then imam sat, so he sat. Okay, actually, let's change this. So this is for the imam. First rakat, second rakat, sitting, third rakat, and then complete. So this would be qada ula, and this would be qada akhira for the imam. So let's say somebody came and they joined the imam here, right? Then imam sat, so they sat. This would be the qada ula. Okay, then the imam completed the namaz, but he's not going to. He needs to make up 2 more rakats, so he'll stand up. Now the issue is that he has prayed 2 rakats, and the order is that we sit after 2 rakats. So that's his first rakat, that's his second rakat. So now he's going to sit again. Okay, and this will be his qada thani, right? Qada thani. And then he needs to make up 1 more rakat. So he prayed 1 more, then he will sit again. This will be his qada akhira, and then he will complete his namaz. So let me repeat here. A person, he joined the imam in the third rakat, which means he missed 2. He missed 2 rakats. He prayed 1 with the imam, 2 he missed. When he prayed his first missing one here, he completed overall 2 rakats. And after 2 rakats, he's supposed to sit. So he had to sit here, right? And then he prayed 1 more, his second missed rakat. By this point, he's completed all of his 3 rakats of Maghrib. Now, he can sit in qada akhira. This would be his qada akhira. And he completes his namaz. I'll give you a chance, or if you wish, you can pause here, and then you can have this diagram and explain to yourselves as to how this person ended up having a multiple qada before going into qada akhira. Okay, moving on. Then the author says, وَقِرَاءَةُ التَّشَهُدِ فِيهِ فِي الصَّحِيحِ. According to the correct opinion, he needs to pray tashahud. He needs to recite tashahud. In what? Fihi, in it. What is this it? He is a zamir here. Right? That zamir is returning to Qudul Awwal or Al Qud. So in that qada, he needs to pray tashahud. He needs to recite tashahud. And this is the correct opinion. وَقِرَاءَتُهُ فِي الْجُلُوسِ الْأَخِيرِ. And also he needs to pray that in the last sitting as well. Julusul akhir here they said, it means Qudul akhir, the last sitting. So he needs to pray tashahud. It's wajib to pray tashahud in qada ula, qada thani, qada thalith, right? And also he needs to pray tashahud in julusul akhir, the last qada. Okay. Then the author says, وَالْقِيَامُ إِلَى الثَّالِثَ مِنْ غَيْرِ تَرَاخٍ بَعْدَ التَّشَهُدِ. Then he needs to stand qiyam in thalitha, meaning in the third rakat. So if he's praying 3 rakats, so he's in qada ula or qada thani or qada thalitha, right? If he's in them, then he needs to stand up towards the next rakat, min ghayri tarakhin, without any delay. Ba'da tashahud. Once that person has recited tashahud, he needs to get up to the next rakat without any delay. What do they mean here? They mean here that you do not recite Durood Sharif. You do not go. If someone goes and says Allahumma salli ala, they say 3 kalimas Allahumma salli ala, that means they have delayed the next rakat and therefore sajda sahv will be wajib upon them. Why is it wajib? Is because of this. So they need to stand for the next rakat straight after tashahud without any delay. Maximum leniency is 2 words, Allahumma salli. You say Allahumma salli ala, you say 3 words and you miss the wajib. Okay. What else is wajib here? The author says lafzus salam. To say as-salam minimum, that is wajib, not the alaykum. Meaning if somebody just says as-salam, the wajib is done. Okay? And then qunutul witr and dua qunut in witr namaz. And you guys should know the dua qunut. If you don't, make sure you learn it. And in fact, as your task, right, you need to read your dua qunut to your colleague or to the person sitting next to you. So these are the wajibat of namaz that we are going through. Now there are some of the things that I mentioned, right? One is if a person recites in qada ula or qada thalitha, or I should say in any qada but not in qada akhira. If they recited Allahumma salli ala, what's the ruling? If somebody recited whole of Durood Sharif in this qada, what's the ruling? Okay, the ruling is that they need to perform sajda sahv because they missed the wajib. Which wajib? This one here. Okay, then I mentioned about Qudul Awwal, Qudul Thani, right? Qudul Salith. right? Okay, now you should summarize this as a short way of remembering the wajibat of namaz. Okay, moving on. Takbiratul Eidain, the extra takbirs in Eid namaz, that is also wajib. تعيين التكبير لافتتاح كل صلاة للعيدين خاصة, right? To fix takbir for the beginning of namaz for every namaz, right? Not just for the Eid. So you begin the namaz with the takbir, yani that you say Allahu Akbar. That is wajib, that you start with Allahu Akbar. Later on you will learn that there's some other ways are also permissible. But ta'yinu takbir, yani you begin your namaz with the takbir, Allahu Akbar, that is wajib. Okay? And also is wajib that you do the takbir of ruku in the second rakat of Eid namaz. It's a wajib that you say takbir for ruku in the second rakat of Eid namaz. Normally, all takbirat except takbir tahrima. So leave takbir tahrima aside. Apart from that, all other takbirat, they are known as takbir intiqal. And takbir intiqal is sunnah. Okay, but in takbir ruku, takbir for ruku in the second rakat of Eid namaz, that's wajib. Okay, let's move on. وَجَهْرُ الْإِمَامِ بِقِرَاءَةِ الْفَجْرِ. The Imam, he is to do jahr, meaning he is to read out loud. He is to read out loud when in Fajr namaz, in the qiraat of Fajr. So the recitation in Fajr namaz, he will do out loud. When we say recitation here, we mean Surah Al-Fatiha and attachment of any other surah, or 3 ayats, or 1 ayat equal to 3. Okay, and then he is to do jahr recitation in the first 2 rakats of Isha Ain. Isha Ain here, it means Maghrib and Isha. Okay, even if these are for qaza, right, whether you're doing qaza or ada, it does not matter, same rule will apply. Now the question that you might ask is qaza is normally prayed alone? No, it is permissible for qaza to be prayed in jamaat as well. So if Imam was leading qaza of Isha namaz, even then he will do the recitation out loud in the first 2 rakats. Okay, in Jummah namaz, he needs to recite out loud. In Eidain, in Taraweeh, and in Witr, in Ramzan, right? When Imam prays Witr namaz with the people, that is only in Ramzan. At that time, he will do recitation out loud in all 3 rakats. You can make notes as to what I've said. Okay. Now, this was for the Jahri namaz, meaning that the recitation is out loud. In Zohar and in Asr, the recitation will be silent, meaning Imam will only read out loud so that he can hear himself. Okay. Also, he will do a silent recitation of Suratul Fatiha, for example, in the remaining rakats of Isha Ain. Now you know what does it mean by Isha Ain. Also the Nafal namaz of the day, okay, he will do recitation silently. Now, Munfarid, the person who's praying alone, he has the option, right? He can choose whether to read out loud, like a person who's praying Nafal namaz in the night, that he reads out loud, his choice. What do I mean by this? This means if a munfarid, he's praying Fajr namaz, or he's praying Isha namaz. Okay, Jummah he can't pray alone, Eidain he can't pray alone, Taraweeh he can't pray alone. In these three namazes, if he wishes, he can do recitation out loud. Otherwise, he can do sirri anyway. He can recite silently anyway. But when we say silent, right, lips needs to move, sound needs to be produced, and the sound needs to be loud enough for oneself to hear. These three things must happen. The lips needs to move, the sound needs to be produced, and the produced sound, he needs to hear it for himself. So in exam there could be a question, for example, what does it mean by reciting silently? Okay, and the answer is what I've told you. The lips needs to move, the sound needs to be produced, and he needs to hear himself. If somebody reads in their mind, that does not count as a recitation. Okay, now next part. وَلَوْ تَرَكَ السُّورَةَ. If a person left out a surat, right? Fi ulayil Isha, in the first two rakats of Isha namaz, or Isha Ain, meaning in the first two, actually they mention Isha here. So in the first two rakats of Isha, that person missed it. Then what does he need to do? قَرَأَهَا فِي الْأُخْرَيَيْنِ. Then he needs to pray that surah in the last two rakats with Fatiha, jahran, out loud if it's an imam. Okay, so let's say he's praying 4 rakat namaz. In the first 2 rakats he only prays Suratul Fatiha. Then in the third and the fourth rakat he will pray Suratul Fatiha, as well as he will attach a surah to it. And if he's an imam, he will do out loud. If he's munfarid, then he has the choice. Okay. Now, وَلَوْ تَرَكَ الْفَاتِحَةِ. What if he completely forgot Suratul Fatiha? لَا يُكَرِّرُهَا فِي الْأُخْرَيَيْنِ. Then he is not to repeat Suratul Fatiha in the last 2 rakats. What does it mean? He means that a person is praying 4 rakats. Okay, 4 rakats. Now you should know now that what does this line represent and what does the cross represent. In fact, in your notes, can you make sure that you have this example, and then can you annotate? So what does this represent? What does this represent? And what does this represent? Let's see if you've been listening throughout the video. Okay, so let's say a person, he stood up in the first rakat, he did not pray Surah Al-Fatiha. In the second rakat, he did not pray Surah Al-Fatiha. Now, in the third rakat, right, he needs to pray only once. In the fourth rakat, he only needs to pray once. Right? He doesn't need to pray it in total 4 times. He doesn't need to do that. He can just do it twice, and his namaz will be valid with sajda sahaf. So this is what he means by la yukarriruha, not to read it twice. Okay. Now the task. I already given you 2 tasks, I believe. Your next task is finding the masdar here, if you can. Actually, let's leave the masdar. Can you use your notes and find out about this word here, la yukarriruha? La yukarriruha. Can you find out about this word using your notes? So it's all of this here. La yukarriruha. Right? And also have a list of wajibat in a short format, so it's easier for you to revise and memorize. Also, the diagrams that I draw, make sure that you have them and annotate them so that you know what's going on. If you wish, you can rerun the video and pause it at appropriate times. Okay, and go with the majority view. For those who have done and they don't need to repeat the video, then they can just start memorizing it or get on with the worksheets that are in the bench for fiqh. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم.